Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Hopefully you are all going well with your studies during this lockdown period. Today I'm going to talk about a poem called DoverBeach, written by Matthew Arnold. Before beginning the poem, let me talk about something about Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold was a Victorian poet. He was born in 1822 and he died in 1888. And he was known to be a Victorian period, or he belonged to the Victorian era. Now the question might arise, what is a Victorian era? English literature, the span of English literature is subdivided or can be subdivided in several ages. Victorian age is one of them. And this particular poem called DoverBeach is an example of dramatic monologue. Now, what is a dramatic monologue? What is a monologue? To put it very simply, monologue is the opposite of dialogue. In dialogue, we know that the speech happens or the communication happens between several characters. But in monologue, it is the poet who is the only speaker. DoverBeach, this particular poem, is a beautiful example of dramatic monologue. Let me start the poem. Hopefully you have the text in front of you. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. So the poem begins with a beautiful description of nature. Matthew Arnold begins the poetry with a vivid description of nature. It seems that it is a typical romantic poetry. The poet says that there is a beautiful sea, the moon is shining very brilliantly. Upon the straits, the moon is shining upon the strait. Now this strait is actually the narrow English Channel. The poet says that the moon is shining brilliantly, the moon is shining placidly on the narrow English Channel. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The poet looks at the French coast, and he says that the moon is also shining over there, but right now the shine, the gleam is gone. The gleam is no more over there. Glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. So, as I said earlier, the shine of the moon was there also. The cliffs of England, the steep rocks on the seashore, the steep rocks of England, those rocks were also being flooded by the moonbeams, but right now the shine is gone. Come to the window. Sweet is the night air. Probably the poet is invoking his lady love. The poet is inviting his lady love to come to the window because he feels it is a beautiful atmosphere to enjoy. He is also invoking the readers to come to the window because he has a lot more to say. Sweet is the night air only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar. So he said he is asking his lady love to come to the window, and he says the night air is very sweet only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. The sweet air is coming from the land, and at that very juncture, listen, you hear the grating roar. Here, this particular line is probably the fulcrum of the entire poetry, and this particular line shows that the poet is not at all over here, the poet is not at all describing a romantic kind of poetry. He is not at all composing a romantic poem. He says, listen, you hear the grating roar. So the moment you stand in front of the window, the moment you look at outside, you have the sensation that a continuous irritating sound is coming from somewhere. The poet says, of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. So this grating roar, this irritating continuous sounds, this sound is coming or is produced by the pebbles which are literally being toyed by the waves. And this is a common phenomenon at seaside, because we have seen that the pebbles are sort of literally being toyed by the waves. Of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence. So he says that the trembling rhythm continues slowly. The poet says the way the waves are playing with the pebbles, the way the waves are drawing the pebbles at first and then throwing them back, the pebbles are producing a continuous irritating sound, and that sound is reminding of some melancholic incidents. The sound is melancholic in nature, and this melancholic sound is restraining the poet to enjoy this scenic, this beautiful night with his lady love. And the moment you talk about this melancholic atmosphere, and the moment you posit a melancholic atmosphere at just the opposite direction of a beautiful night, you are actually bringing forth a kind of dialectics. And here this dialectics is between beauty and or apparent beauty and melancholic atmosphere. Then he says, with tremulous cadence. This particular phrase, tremulous cadence, means the sound that was coming from the pebbles is still going on. That irritating sound is still going on. And bring the eternal note of sadness in. These two lines completely change the mood of the poem. So apparently what seemed to be a romantic poem, apparently what seemed to be giving a vivid description of nature, at these two lines, that particular myth or that previous idea is completely shattered. Or, to put it another way, these two lines are debunking the primary guesses about the poem. The poet says, or rather these two lines say, the monotonous rhythm of waves make the speaker depressed. So the poet was supposed to enjoy this beautiful nature. The poet was supposed to enjoy the scenic beauty, this tranquility, but he cannot do that. There is something in nature, there is some sort of sound that is being played in the background that continuously disturbs the poet. And this sound is coming from the pebbles. This sound is coming from the faraway land. The tone of the poem at this particular juncture, or these two lines, actually change the tone of the poem from apparent happiness to permanent melancholic tune. Now, why do I call this apparent happiness? Because the more we talk about the poem, or at the end of the poem, or as we finish the poem, we will find that there is no happiness in this poem. The poem talks about melancholic tune. The poem carries within it a tune of melancholia, and the apparent beauty or apparent description of beauty is simply a camouflage. The first stanza ends here. Second stanza, he says, Sophocles long ago. Sophocles was a Greek tragedian. I know people are very tech savvy. You can simply Google out who Sophocles was and you can read about Sophocles, and you can also see the images of Sophocles over there. He says, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegon. Aegon is the shore of Aegon Sea, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. He says Sophocles also had a similar kind of experience. When Sophocles was standing at the shore of Aegon Sea, he also had the experience that probably he was listening to sounds which were coming to him carrying melancholic tune. Also, we also have our poet, that is Matthew Arnold, who is also having similar kind of experience. That is, like Sophocles, Matthew Arnold also listening a sound. Matthew Arnold is also perceiving a sound that is spoiling his rest. He says that he cannot enjoy this beauty as long as the melancholic tune is still played at the background. Then he says, into his mind, I am repeating the line, into his mind the turbid ebb and flow. This particular phrase called turbid ebb and flow, it talks about, or it rather means, human misery, which is like mud of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. So the poem is no more a description of nature. The poem is no more a romantic piece. Simply because the poet is invoking his lady love, we may assume that probably it is going to be a love poem. But no, it is not a love poem at all. The poet says that he is also hearing the melancholic tune, and this melancholic tune is spoiling his rest. This melancholic tune is spreading cold water over his experience. This melancholic tune is making the entire atmosphere taste bitter. Then comes the third stanza. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and around earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. These three lines are probably the most important lines over here, and as I said earlier, the point is camouflaging to be a description of romantic poetry or a description of nature, but this poem is not at all a romantic poetry. These three lines are important because it shows the philosophy of Matthew Arnold behind composing this poetry. The sea of faith. This faith means human faith, faith in society, and more importantly, faith in religion. Now, to proceed further with this stanza, let me elaborate these three lines. Matthew Arnold belonged to Victorian era, and it was a time of a huge change. It was a time of science. It was a time of the progression of industry, progression of technology. And the more science progressed at that era, the more technology progressed, the more people sort of grabbed technology, they furthered themselves away from religion. So as we know that there has always been a tussle between science and technology, Matthew Arnold felt that since new inventions were happening at that particular span of time he belonged to, Matthew Arnold felt that probably it is a time when faith, religious faith, faith in God is not going to stay any longer. It was a time when people were so much busy with technology, people were so much busy with scientific inventions that they stepped away, they stepped back from the path of religion, and that is something that is inflicting pain in Matthew Arnold, because he believed in religion, he believed in the existence of God, and that is why he feels that this is a time which unleashes a kind of existential crisis in him. Then he says, after the third line, there comes the fourth line, but now I only hear its melancholy. So the idea clarifies, the idea is clarified over here. He says that it was a very beautiful time. It was a time of faith. It was a time of religion. But now it is a time of science. It is a time of logic. It is not a time of faith. It is not a time of religion. It is not a time in believing God. And the days of faith are gone, and the days of faith are replaced by the melancholic tune of science, the melancholic tune of logic. He says, but now I only hear its melancholy, long, withdrawing roar. So the poet hears the sorrowful sound, the sorrowful roar of the retreating steps of faith with the receding tides. So, as if the faith has been personified over here, and the poet says that he can clearly listen to the sound of faith receding back. That faith is leaving, that faith is going back, the faith is stepping back. Matthew Arnold says that he can listen the sound of stepping back of faith. He can clearly perceive that faith, believe in God, all these values, all these Victorian moralities are now receding back, because these Victorian moralities have no place in this particular era which is experiencing a change. Then he says, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear. Drear means dull. Note this particular word drear, it means dull. And naked, that is raw. Shingles, shingles means pebbles. Shingles of the world. So, the way the pebbles are toyed by the waves, the way the pebbles are dehumanized by the waves, in a similar fashion, in this era of change, belief in religion, faith in God and religion, this idea of faith itself is topsy-turvied. The idea of faith has been topsy-turvied by the invention of science, and the poet can listen to the sound. The poet can feel that faith as a human being, as if it is a human being, the faith is receding back. Next comes the fourth and final stanza. Ah, love, let us be true. This is one such feeling that Matthew Arnold believes will be there in our changing society. No matter how much you progress in science, no matter how much you progress in industry, love is something that still enkindles the hope in human beings. So, the poet here is invoking his lady love. He says, ah, love, let us be true to one another. So, he is at times afraid that the way people have shun off, the people have wiped out, obliterated, molested the idea of faith, people might molest, sorry, it's not the word molested, people might molest the idea of love. People might kill the very existence of love. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy nor love nor light. These two lines are a beautiful contradiction of each other. Matthew Arnold says that this particular time, this modern time, promises a lot many things. This modern time may appear very colorful, vibrant, full of promises, but deep down he believes, he feels that it is very null and void. So no matter how much promise, no matter how many promises this modern time may make to the civilization, it is basically colorless, it has no joy, it has no love, it has no light. And the moment he talks about light, we can easily confer that he is talking about biblical light, and we know the line, let there be light. And Matthew Arnold believes that this era of science and technology has no light at all, because it is full of darkness. And he is afraid of the idea that with the progression of science and technology, since man is receding back from the paths of religion and faith and God, time will come when human beings will forget how to help each other, how to love one another, and how to behave like a proper social being. Also he says, nor certitude. So this new world, this new era has no certitude nor peace. There is no peace in this particular era, because he believes a world which is devoid of faith, a world which is devoid of religious beliefs, a world which is devoid of God himself, which doesn't confer the existence of God, can never be happy. Peace cannot stay in that particular world which is devoid of belief, which is devoid of God. So he says, nor certitude, I'm repeating, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And this is something which is extremely important. He believes this will be a world, or we are rather facing towards a world, we are stepping in a new world where there will be no help for the distressed people. Nobody will stand by the distressed people. It will be a world full of cruelty. It will be a world which will apparently look like very dazzling, but deep down it will be completely shattered. It will be a world which will be completely devoid of all human values. The final three lines. And we are here as on a darkling plain. He says that since we are completely clueless, we don't know what to do and how to do or where to approach, we are standing in a time, we are standing in a land which is full of darkness, darkling plain, swept with confused alarms. We are very much confused. We don't know what to do, or we don't know what we are doing, or we don't know where to go. Confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. He says the way in a war or in a battlefield, any armies fight against each other without knowing what they are fighting for, what is their ideology. They have no idea if they should do this at all. The way, or in a similar fashion, we are also fighting with each other in this new age of science, because there is no religious belief, there is no faith, and the moment faith is banished from the society, this society becomes a kingdom of animals. And that is the basic point of fear that Matthew Arnold is trying to arouse, that the moment faith will be banished from our society, the moment we will wipe out faith from our lives, we will shun off faith of our lives, we will destroy ourselves. And by destroying ourselves, we in return will actually destroy this human society. And we will end up in nihilism. So the poem ends over here, and we can easily confer that this is an example of Matthew Arnold's pessimism, because he finds that there is no rays of hope. The poem began with a very beautiful description of nature. Apparently we felt that probably it is going to be a nature poem, it is going to be a romantic poem, the poet had his lady love with him, but he cannot find peace because he is very much troubled, he is very much disturbed by the changing scenario of time. He is very much inflicted with pain that the previous time is passing away, and a new time is stepping in, and he cannot stand this juncture. He cannot accept the fact that there is nothing as permanent. There is nothing as permanent as change. Matthew Arnold, if we are to find a limitation of Matthew Arnold in this particular poem, we may say that Matthew Arnold couldn't accept the change, and we know that change is the only thing that is permanent. And since he cannot accept the change, he cannot accept the new era full of science and invention and technology and industry, he feels that we are stepping towards, or we are proceeding towards, we are heading towards a new era or a world which will be devoid of faith, devoid of love, devoid of certitude, and obviously devoid of happiness. So this is how the poem ends. Hopefully this video will help you, and I would expect your feedback for this video. And if you have further questions, feel free to ask, feel free to post your comments. And if you think that I need to elaborate more, or I need to talk about the themes or important questions regarding this poem, you can also say that, and I'll try to make another video regarding this poem. So that's all for today. Please take care of yourselves, and I hope that you will abide by the safety precautions. Thank you. Goodbye.